It's massive. It's the culture in Mexico. Boxing gyms, every street, everywhere. Everybody boxes. The women will hit you with a clean one too. Wow. In Mexico, right? It's part of the culture, which is beautiful.
I've been learning a little bit more about MMA sort of indirectly. Let's start with the interesting topic where I've been coming across it, the celebrity matches.
Okay.
But I don't know if this has been going on for a long time. I wanted to ask you what you think about the popularity of celebrity matches in fighting. Is it dangerous for people that are not fighters? Is it good for the sport? Do you see it as a positive thing? How do you reflect on it?
Each one of those are individual questions. So I'll give you the overview for the concept of time. I think celebrity matches are good in that there is the ability for every human to express themselves in a violent manner, through violence, through organized violence, through rules, agreed upon rules, fisticuffs. Sure, that's great. Climb mountains, drive fast cars, or even bodybuilding, which is probably more dangerous by far. That being said, there is a conflation of the ability of the celebrity to be a boxer or a fighter. So being a good celebrity fighter, like Jake Paul, he's a good celebrity fighter. He is not in the category of the greatest fighters who happen to be celebrities based upon their fighting ability. Now, Jake Paul could be 2 years into a stellar career. We don't know yet. He's 2 years into a combat career and he's got some wins. So he's slowly, and I'd say it might take another 2 to 3 years or so of escalating matchups like you see in boxing. You'll get a boxing prospect that'll have 20 fights against journeymen, 2 and 10 guys, 4 and 6 guys, 5 and 5 guys, 10 and 4 guys. Slowly there will be an escalation. So that being said, happy to see athletes do that, actors, celebrities do that are training to do that and are doing it respectfully, not so much the Jose Cansecos of the world. So that is different. Jake Paul's training for real, so he's at least respecting the craft.
I was also watching an interview of Jose Canseco. I didn't know that he had fights as well, and he didn't do too well on them, I think, which is incredible because he's such an athlete physically. I really didn't know he's 6'4" and extremely muscular. I really didn't realize that originally. So I wanted to ask you, who were the best celebrity boxers then off the top, or fighters, sorry, off the top of your head in your recollection? Were there some good celebrities that surprised you?
I would say, well, Jake Paul is surprising. Let's talk about him. You look at what he's doing. Kid hits hard. You know, he steps forward. He has good fundamentals and he's aggressive. That's the rare thing. I know great athletes, amazing Olympic level athletes that don't have that same on switch in the face of violence. Jake Paul has that. Fault him, if you will, for his bravado. But you can't fault him for his willingness to engage, Leo. And I think that's really what makes great fighters. It's the willingness to engage more so than the beautiful technique or even the lineage of training. He's got that one thing.
Fascinating. So I want to ask you then, as you've been seeing MMA become more professionalized and athletes coming in as fighters, do you see less of that fighting spirit in athletes as compared to traditional fighters? Or especially in the beginning when you had those sort of rough and tumble fighters that weren't really trained as much in fighting arts in the beginning of MMA? I don't know what they call them. Like the guy with the big belly, he used to be an awesome Abbott, is his name?
Tank Abbott.
Yeah, like those kind of guys. Is those guys had more fighting spirit maybe than the athletes that come in later, or is it sort of something that can be taught?
I wouldn't say if it's more or less fighting spirit. I think there's more on the line now. The numbers are much bigger. The career is now a career. It's not a concrete worker who then fights a few times. So I think that's a part of it. But I don't think that's any different over generations in time. When Sugar Ray Leonard was fighting, I mean, he was the highest paid boxer of his day. Now you have undercard athletes making vastly more than he was making at that time. So I think as that grows, the strategy changes. And I think a lot of this is strategic. So heart-wise, fighting brings in people with heart. You don't get in the fighting because you lack heart, I would say.
Well, that's interesting. Good point. There's actually also been some celebrity boxing matches where they've been trying to promote the gloves up, guns down attitude between people that might get into violence and stuff like that. So that's also fantastic as well. I wanted to ask you, Mike, I don't know much about boxing. And a few days ago, I was watching an interview of a boxer who had like 30 KOs and 0 losses. But he fought all his boxing matches in Mexico, which I was curious about. Is that a way that some boxers can plan their matches such that they win most of the initial matches to develop a better record? Is that done? Why would somebody choose all their matches in Mexico? That's what I was curious about.
So I alluded to that earlier in speaking with Jake Paul and scaling. Very common in boxing or in good sports strategy. If you're a good manager and agent that's bringing an athlete through their career, you're going to start them in lesser organized, lesser restricted, lesser controlled, less risk matchups as the athlete gets ready, putting on their fresh shoes for the first time, getting the brand new glasses or gloves laced up and the bright lights and the cameras in their face. Let's worry about that part before we fight the 10-0, 24-year-old killer. So I believe that's part of it. Now, boxing is massive in Mexico.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it's massive. It's the culture in Mexico. Boxing gyms, every street, everywhere. Everybody boxes. The women will hit you with a clean one too. Wow. In Mexico, right? It's part of the culture, which is beautiful. So that being said, you go to Mexico, you get your ass kicked too.
Okay. I had no idea.
So I think it's just a matter of bringing an athlete up through the proper matchups.
One final question before you go back to my saved questions that I actually wanted to ask you. But one other thing, there was I can't remember his name, but there was an African-American street fighter from California, I believe, from Northern California, who was bald. And he became a very good MMA fighter, but died recently of a heart attack a few years ago. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do not.
He had a beard. He was very aggressive all over the media.
Kimbo Slice?
Kimbo Slice, exactly. I wanted to ask you, was he like a talented fighter?
Kimbo Slice, who I was friends with and friendly with and a peer of and got to spend some good time with him, was a real fighter. And he was a superstar. And he was charismatic. He was, in a way, a Jake Paul, an early Jake Paul. He was an internet sensation because of his YouTube backyard fights. Him and Jorge Masvidal came up on the very same circuit. And that's in Florida, Southern Florida, I believe, in that area. Okay. So they came up, and that's real deal. These are real guys who then could monetize it. It's like a loan shark eventually opening up his own credit union or local bank, right? Eventually you move into that stage.
Fascinating.